It is very clear to all of the scientists involved in this field, even if they are only able to say it within themselves and unable to say it publicly, that the man that we know conventionally to be a white man evolved from a black man over a period of some 20,000 years of adaptation to a different climate. And if we are to say with any serenity, resting totally on scientific data, that is the conclusion that we must come to.
There's one person on earth, that is the African person. And in traveling around the globe, this African finds him and herself in different climates. And because of the nature of the production of vitamin D in the body, it has to begin to regulate itself. So in order to produce vitamin D, this very dark complexion, very curly-haired African begins to depigment itself. And over thousands of years, this very dark complexion, wide-nosed, thick-lipped, very curly-haired African, because of climate, depigments itself, its hair gets straight because of the oils produced with the lack of the sun, its nose gets aquiline, the lips get thin, and over time this African depigments itself into the European. What also helped this African get in very serious trouble was the Wormian Ice Age, which was the last ice age on Earth. This Wormian Ice Age literally chased them into the mountains of northern Europe that we know of today. That would have been where Cheikh Anta Diop says the 51st parallel is. At that point in time, for thousands of years, in the depigmentation process, ice mountains were created. Ice mountains that did not allow Africans to return back into the southern lands. Therefore, they had to retreat into caves and put clothes on. When what is known as an interstadial came, which is a warming trend of the Ice Age, they then found the ability to begin to move further south. As they moved further south on the other side of the ice mountain, where it had been a temperate or a very warm climate, when they got down into the real southern lands here, coming out the Caucasus Mountains, they met upon peoples of different backgrounds. The great majority of them of African descent. Whether you are in Mesopotamia over here, whether you're dealing with any of the Saudi Arabian areas, this is why it's so important to understand that the European, the Eurasian as we know them today, the essence that made Saddam Hussein light complexion was called the Jectanide. Jectanides. That is the formation of the Eurasian coming down, meeting these individuals in Mesopotamia, and getting a first concept of what culture and civilization is. They still couldn't get it too good because they started wars, because this was their manner. They were a very violent people. They were a very dominating people. And so they were kicked out of every town they went to as they were traveling west, and finally they find themselves in Cana, and then they cross over, which then brings this Eurasian into Kemet, and for the first time you see Eurasians in Kemet. This did not happen during the Old Kingdom. This did not happen. This happened during the first intermediate period. The Africans had gone through 6 dynasties prior to the first European of any substance coming into the land to make him or herself feel known. So all this concept about the pyramids, all that's nonsense. And I think that really, as our brother was saying, sure, we've got to stop talking on certain levels. I believe that our discussion at this point is counterproductive. See, we're not about asking them, was Egyptians black? That's yesterday's discussion. See, we dealt with that yesterday. Whether or not you're up to the par is your business. Okay, you missed the train. I didn't. I was on that train. And so now we have got to be about the formation of a nation in terms of our thought process. And this is why the Moors become so very important to us, because if you do not understand the Moors, it's very difficult for us as a people to understand why we're in the position that we're in today. You cannot understand why we're in the position we're in today if you don't understand what happened in 1492. You cannot understand what happened in 1492 if you don't understand the Crusades. You cannot understand the Crusades if you don't understand the Moors. Because the very nature of the knowledge that the Crusaders, the Christian Europeans, got of the riches of the East, why Columbus was on the seas in the first place hundreds of years later, was because of what the Moors had brought into Spain. And when you look at European powers, see, here's another way that you can look into it. See, this is why the two areas that they want to keep black folk out of in education is social studies and language arts. It's the two areas that we have to conquer. Math, science, all that's important, but those are all physical sciences that we can master anyway. But you see, social studies tells you what happened, language arts puts it in a language that tells you what happened. And see, we're not suffering from a misunderstanding of science nor of math. We are suffering from a misunderstanding of ourselves and how to express ourselves, which falls into the category of social studies and language arts. So when I was looking for an area to find myself in Board of Ed, I immediately went to social studies because I understood that revolutionary things could happen, and they are happening. Because you got to understand the sequence of events in history. You have to see the sequence, and when you see sequence, then everything else comes to be an understanding. The Jectonites coming down into this area then mix with these African folk, and these are the people who would later become the Saddam Hussein, but deeply entrenched in an African thought. See, even Saddam Hussein is an African man, even if not by complexion, which he is by complexion. But even if they were to claim that because of their complexion, they still lived a culture that was African-based, because they as a people had no culture. They brought no culture with them. They brought no formed pattern of behavior, because it was so easy to adapt to the behavior of African people, because that's where the culture was. That's where the civilization was. That's where measurement occurred. And where measurement occurred comes mathematics and science and the formations of technology, and that's what brings the civilization through. So it's important that we understand these things in terms of understanding who we are as a people today. For instance, we teach that the Western civilization is based on the Aristotelian model. Aristotle's model of so-called democracy and all this other stuff that they taught, this is what the Western world is based on. But what they don't tell you is that it was the Moors that translated the works of the Greeks, who then taught the European Aristotle. See, we don't know that. We think that Europeans sat and studied Aristotle. They didn't. They couldn't read.
Living thing has always adapted to its environment. Human civilization dates back 3 million years ago. The oldest skeletal remains were found in Africa. This is how we know the first human civilization were people of color. It doesn't matter what race you are, it doesn't matter where you live at now, all human life started in Africa. Every human being on this world is a descendant from Africa. And over time, people migrated to different countries, which created different races and different cultures. Over millions of years, people will adapt to their environment. And as they adapt to their environment, their skin tone is going to change based on the climate in which they're living in. This is what created the different races, and this is what created the different cultures. European people became white because you need white skin in order to adapt to cold weather. Whiter skin is more suitable for living in cold weather. That's why most European Caucasians have whiter skin. It takes hundreds of thousands of years to evolve. And as the world gets hotter and the sun gets bigger, there will be no need for white skin, because there will be no more winters, there will be no more cold weather. We're seeing this with global warming right now. 100,000 years from now, there will be no more cold weather. So white people will become more dark. They will become people of color as time goes on. Now, in today's society, some people think having dark skin and kinky hair is looked at as being a curse, when it's not a curse. It's actually a blessing to have dark skin and kinky hair, because that skin tone protects you from the sun. It protects you from the sun's radiation. People who have dark skin and kinky hair have benefits that other races of people don't have. This is why it's a blessing to have dark skin and kinky hair. Now, the media standard of beauty is white skin and straight hair. But every culture has a different standard of beauty. Every culture looks at beautiful as being different. I believe dark skin and kinky hair is beautiful. There's some white people who hate black people without realizing that black people created white people. Black people created all the races in the world. What creates this hate and divide is the ignorance of not knowing where human civilization started. Once you know that all human civilization started in Africa, this will stop the hatred and divide. People will wake up and realize that we're all the same. I'm not saying black people are better than white people. I'm not saying black people are better than anybody. I'm saying that we're all the same. There's really only one race, and that's the human race. Until people wake up and realize that, the racism is going to continue. The bigotry is going to continue. Until people wake up and realize that we're all one and the same, this hate and divide is going to continue. And I don't care whether it's a white person hating a black person or a black person hating a white person. They're both just as ignorant as the other. If you hate somebody because of the color of their skin, you are a racist, ignorant individual. I don't care whether you're black, white, Latino, Asian. No one should hate someone because of the color of their skin.
Back from Sukkot. So we're going to do a topical study today, and I'm really excited about that. This is something that has kind of vexed me for a long time, and quite honestly, over the past few months we've done some teachings, got some pushback on that, but it's also enabled a lot of people to dig into the Word and come to some really great discoveries. We did a teaching called The Synagogue of Satan, and this really exposed that the state of Israel is not biblical Israel, and that was really hard for some people to be able to see that, because there's such a strong push for Christian Zionism and Messianic Zionism. That was really difficult for a lot of people to come to terms with. That the Temple Mount isn't in fact the Temple Mount, it's the Antonia Roman fortress, that the actual Temple Mount was further south in the city of David. And then the one that I think has really been a big stumbling block for so many. And the reason that I bring this up now is because we are in a religious political time where I just am seeing so much coming to light that as we speak forth the truth, there is pushback. But it needs to come forth in this time when these globalists are really pulling the strings, and so many people are blinded to the scriptures, blinded to historical truth, and they're led by their heartstrings, but it's not actually fact. One of those things, again, that people have been led for so many years is thinking that the Ashkenazi are in fact descendants of Shem. And we've discovered that the Ashkenazi are in fact the synagogue of Satan. They're the descendants of Japheth. They're Turkic Mongols from the Khazarian region that converted to Judaism in the 6th and 7th century. These are the things that we've discovered over the past few months. Those teachings came across in exposing the rotting stick of Israel and the synagogue of Satan that are in our archives. But then if I'm going to go forth and say, well, you know, those that say that they are Jews but are in fact not, but are the synagogue of Satan, and the Ashkenazi are in fact not Jews, they are sons of Gomer, Japheth, they're not even Shemites. Many people have come to me and said, well, who are the real Jews then? Where are the Jews and what's going on? I mean, we understand that we're Joseph's multicolored coat and we're exiled into the nations. But if Yahweh is gathering the whole house of Israel, all 12 tribes, and the stranger that wants to graft in and join, then where are the tribes and what's going on? So I think it's really important to address this subject because, as I said, 92% of the people that say that they are Jews today are in fact Ashkenazi, sons of Gomer, so thereby are the synagogue of Satan, they who say they are Jews and are not. So who are the real Jews? That's the question that has been posed to me many times over the past months. And there's really two answers to that question. And I'm going to be thorough today because I need to be thorough, because when you speak about this, it's going to upset a lot of people. So we're going to have to take our time in the scripture. So bear with me. Two answers to that question. One, I already addressed in the rotting stick of false restoration and the synagogue of Satan teaching. And that is, who are the true Jews? Well, the Fehalim, which is a term for the so-called Palestinians, the migrant farmers that never left the land of Israel in 70 of the Common Era when the Romans came in. They still were attached to the land. They were called the Fehalim, or what we call today the so-called Palestinians, are in fact the descendants of the poor agricultural Jewish society that stayed in the land, yet they converted to Islam in the 6th and 7th centuries to avoid paying the Islamic jizya tax, because if they had done that, they would have lost their land, and they were attached to the land, so therefore they converted to Islam so that they could stay in the land, working the soil that their forefathers worked. This is recognized in 1918 by the historians David Ben-Gurion, who of course was the future Prime Minister of Israel back then, and Yitzhak Ben-Zvi, the future President of Israel. Both of them historians recognize this fact. Today, of course, it's buried in your history books. But what about the affluent, regal Jews that weren't connected to the land? Because we've addressed who the poor migrant workers are, the Fehalim. But not everyone in the tribe of Judah was connected to the land. There was a royal, regal class that were merchants that would travel throughout the empire and throughout Judea and throughout the Roman Empire as merchants. These were the regal, affluent Jews that weren't connected to the land, but they were engaged in trade and export. Who are they? And where did these royal nomadic Jews migrate to? That's the question that I want to address today. Because we're going to be looking at and tracking the migration patterns and thus identifying the regal merchant class of the house of Judah, as opposed to who we've already identified, the poor migrant working class, which were the Fehalim, today's Palestinians. I can't stand it when the globalists, the society that tries to enslave us, names us. I'm not a Caucasian, okay? Because a Caucasian is an Asian from the Caucasus Mountain region. The Russian steppes, Caucasian. I'm an Anglo-Saxon, which means a son of Isaac. So when they start to name you and you have to fill out these little boxes and the government hands you out these little and check what race you are, they're the ones telling you who you are. Don't buy it, because I'm not Caucasian. Who's Caucasian? The Ashkenazi Khazars, the Turkic Mongols from the Russian steppes, the Caucasus Mountains. They are Caucasians. We've already explained that. But I'm an Anglo-Saxon. I grew up in England. I'm a son of Isaac. That's what it means. You see, so I'm not going to check those boxes, because the New World Order, the globalists, trying to enslave us. But we serve an Elohim, and the first commandment is, I am Yahweh your Elohim, who delivered you from slavery. That's the key. This whole political system right now is all about slavery. The globalists are slavers. And we, as Israel, have got to understand who our Elohim is. He is the one who delivers his people from slavery. And today you are seeing more slavery by the politicians in this land. And it is truly true. Chapter 4, verse 2. The precious sons of Zion are comparable to fine gold.
Yeah.
Verse 8. That of slaves temporarily before selling them off. If a slave auction fell on a Jewish holiday, it was postponed due to a lack of buyers and sellers. The Jews of Suriname gave their slave plantations Hebrew names, such as Machanaim, Nachamu, and Goshen. Rabbi Herbert Bloom adds that the slave trade was one of the most important Jewish activities. One of the most important Ashkenazi Jewish activities. In 1694, Jews owned 9,000 regal African nomadic Jews from the house of Judah. In 1694, they owned 9,000 enslaved from the house of Judah. Jewish slaving is confirmed in the Jewish Encyclopedia. But you start talking about it, again, you're digging into historical truth, not sacred history. So why does the American Black history exist solely for the past 400 years, beginning in the 17th century? And all you hear about is, well, the transatlantic slave trade. But there's so much more than the transatlantic slave trade. You've got to go further back. I want to quote to you from Babylon to Timbuktu. It's a book by Rudolph R. Windsor. This is page 84. Quote, in the year 65 before the Common Era, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 of the Common Era, General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state with great slaughter. During the period of the military governors of Palestine, many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery. The slave markets were full of black Jewish slaves. Page 86. Many Jews fled to those parts of northwest Africa known as Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, and Mauritania. Many other Jews fled to areas where Rome didn't have any jurisdiction. This was the region to the south, the Sahara Desert, and the Sudan. You see, in the 1930s, it was an established fact that the regal class of Negro nomads exiled from the kingdom of Judah, that they resided in Songhai, in Mali, in Ghana, in Kenem, in Bornu, in the empire, and within the Onadu forest of Dahomey south of Timbuktu. Communities complete with Aramaic Torah scrolls. On page 90, From Babylon to Timbuktu, it says this: the black Jews had an advantage over the African tribes. Now, this is going to tell you why the native indigenous black Africans worked with Islam to trap the house of Judah and sell them to the Ashkenazi ship owners that were also Portuguese and British Ashkenazi ship owners. And that's the history we want to see. Why did this happen? Page 90. The black Jews had an advantage over the African tribes. They carried their culture, they carried their history, laws, and written records with them. This assured them a constant precedent for the development of a higher social organization. Because of the stability of the black Jewish culture, the Jews were not absorbed into the autochthonous population. In fact, the Jews absorbed some of the native tribes. The Jews made use of every opportunity. They were an industrious and skillful people. In the Jewish Ghanaian states were found kings, princes, governors, generals, secretaries, treasurers, revenue agents, judges, architects, engineers, doctors, historians, language interpreters, mathematicians, jewelers, sculptors, masons, carpenters, painters of art, goldsmiths. There were leather workers, potters, armorers, saddlers, blacksmiths, agriculturists. Do you think the indigenous blacks resented the regal Negro nomadic class of the House of Judah? And do you think they wanted to get paid by Islam? And do you think Islam wanted to get paid by the Ashkenazi Jewish ship merchants? And then you get to your transatlantic slave movement. But don't start at the ships on the west coast of Africa. That's all you're going to get in your democratic American public re-education system. And it just troubles me. Even blacks in this country aren't educated enough to go further back. Do you know how many blacks in America have been lost to Islam? It's outrageous. That's not your tribe. Your tribe is Judah. Muhammad's tribe enslaved you. Why would you convert to Muhammad's tribe when you're of King David's tribe? Don't convert to the tribe that enslaved you and then sold you to Ashkenazi ship merchants. More black Negroes have been lost to Islam in the 20th century than any other believing, Bible-believing group. It's outrageous because they don't want you to know who you really are and what tribe you're from, but you're not from Muhammad's tribe. Never were. Never were. You are a regal Negro class from the royal house of Judah. It's outrageous to me. Islam is not the black man's religion. It's for those of the Banu Hasham clan of the Quraysh tribe. That's who it's for. It's not from the tribe of Judah. Never was, never will be. It was never the religion of the Negro nomads in Africa because they were exiled from the kingdom of Judah. In Joel chapter 3 verse 6, It talks about these indigenous black Africans in collusion with the Ashkenazi because they were selling the Negro house of Judah to the Greeks. And who did the Greeks? The Greeks, they invented democracy, didn't they? Didn't they just? You see, Africans weren't selling their own people. They were selling a tribe that had encroached upon their land, a higher educated, regal class that had judges, coppersmiths, goldsmiths, and all of this, and they did not assimilate in, and they wanted their stuff, and they wanted to get paid by Islam, and Islam wanted to get paid by the Ashkenazi ship merchants. The Igbo tribe of Africa, they're Jewish. If you were to look, just look at old maps of the African slaving maps. There's an old map of, I think it's Guinea in maybe in the 1720s, 1730s. There's this old map, and it's called a Slave Coast map. Look on that. It's the Slave Coast map of Guinea, 1736. And you look on the West Africa map of 1747, and it says right on the West Africa map of 1747, Kingdom of Judah. Right there on the map. On the 1747 Slave Coast map, Desert of Seth. Well, who was Seth? He was Adam and Eve's third son after the death of who? Abel. Desert of Seth, right there on an African slaving map. Luke chapter 3 verse 38, we're talking about the genealogy of Yahusha from the tribe of Judah. Verse 38, the son of Enosh, the son of Seth, the son of Adam, the son of Elohim. But by 1771, the very same map, even with the same cartographer that did the map of 1747, all of a sudden, by 1771, they got wise to it. And there is no Kingdom of Judah no more on that map. Disappeared. Same cartographer. Somebody got to him, right? Why would the same cartographer remove the Kingdom of Judah from the 1777 map, 1771 map, that was in the 1747 map? Why would he do that? You see, you've got to go further back, because the more we go along this timeline, in this day that we have, people don't understand what has gone on in the past. And we are making the very same mistakes as we come to this apocalyptic time of days that we're living in. You see, Israel is that multicolored coat. The true Jews, the Shemites, the Fehalim, the Palestinians, yes, they're lighter skinned. The true Jews, yes, the regal class, they were darker skinned, called Negro. And you can go, well, how come within one tribe we can have multicolored skin tones? Why do we have lighter skin that will work in the land, and then we have darker Negro skin to the house of Judah? That doesn't make sense. Yes, it does. It's called migration and diet. You spend 2,000 years in the Sahara Desert, and with the vitamin D and the melanin and your diet, skin color is connected to geographic location. Around the equator, you're going to be darker skinned, and your diet, you're going to be darker skinned. 2,000 years. That's why we have a multicolored coat of the house of Israel. It's fabulous. Melanin, change of diet, more vitamin D. Therefore, you have one tribe, many colors. No one is excluded. You have black African Jewry. You have them. They are the real Shemites. Diet and environment. You see, the Jewish slave trade, its roots are in Bolshevism, and it's in effect in the USA today. It truly is. In Al-Andalus, which was Islamic Spain, that's what it was called back in the day, there was a guild of Ashkenazi Khazar slavers. They were traders in Constantinople, which of course was the capital of the Ottoman Empire. Their guild had about 2,000 members. The slaves were provided by Tartar raids on Slavic villages. Until the late 18th century, the Crimean Khanate maintained a massive slave trade with the Ottoman Empire and the Middle East. They exported about 2 million slaves from Poland, Lithuania, and Russia from the period of 1500 to 1700 of the Common Era. So
I'm going to stop it there.